In today's video, I wanted to try to put out a little bit of a public service announcement, if you will. I'm trying to just help as many folks as I can as it's a big investment to buy lithium. I get it. I know we talk about it a lot, but I couldn't not share the story of this super nice guy named Greg that reached out to me, lives out in Carlsbad, California, was having a big time issue with his Icon, and he had made the investment in a lithium battery, but yet his cart was shutting down halfway through his trip that he likes to take each day with his dogs. So, once again, the guy in the photo, his name's Greg. I can't say enough. Just such a nice guy. Just looking for help, and he had been dealing with his golf cart place in that he bought the cart from and trying to fix this issue. And he was kind of just they didn't have an answer. They were trying their best, but nobody really knew exactly why this was happening. And that's kind of why I wanted to make this video. You got to remember, out there in his neck of the woods, there is a lot of hills. It's not flat like it is, and where I live, it's just a lot of hills and sometimes extreme temperatures, stuff like that, and that can affect, if things are going to work or not if you don't have the right battery, as we all know. So the interesting thing about what he was trying to do is, or what they were trying to do is, they were troubleshooting it, and it wasn't necessarily. I mean, first of all, none of this is a knock on Allied batteries. I don't, you know where this is going, but it's not a knock on Allied. I've never owned one. I did research them before I bought my lithium battery, but it wasn't what I wanted. I was just told to go in another direction when I was just researching it. But when he called me originally, he was telling me everything that was happening. And the thing that was coming to, I just told him right up front that my biggest fear is that the specs of the battery he has, the specs may not be true. Even though that's what they're saying, the specs, they just may not be right. And I said, so I'll help you troubleshoot it and all that, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure if what's Allied is putting on that battery is what we're all getting. And, or, what is exactly the output that your cart is getting. They can put whatever they want on that label. And I say all that because Allied did come out and look at his battery, and they said the battery was good. So for me, just because I guess initially I hadn't heard a lot of great things, I was a little worried. I was skeptical, and I just said up front, if the specs are true to that battery, then the battery should not be the issue. So we went and we started to look into other ways that we could possibly get his cart to quit acting up like this, because it's just scary. It's dangerous when the cart just freaking stops out of the blue. So the one thing, I'm just trying to show you some footage of some of the stuff that he shared with me, the road that he took each day and stuff like that. And not a super steep incline, but it did have a little bit of an incline. But that's what the carts, the Icon, the ones that are out that way typically have the bigger controller, like the 450, I believe it is, a little bit bigger of a controller, and a bigger motor, a 5K motor. So the cart should be able to do this. I mean, it should be able to handle it as long as you have a battery that can actually do the job. So kind of to get into the story here, he had bought the cart from a place called Cart Mart, and he can't say enough good things about them. They really have tried their best with him. He's sent videos and pictures and stuff. They've been out there 15, 20 times to his house trying to fix this thing. And no matter what, they just can't get to the bottom of it. Now, in their defense, I have actually been told by Greg that they sell primarily club cars and stuff like that. And you got to remember, a lot of those carts, I mean, they're trying to catch up with kind of like not catch up, I know they're the big dogs in town, but when it comes to just out the gate performance, Icon kind of changed it. They did. They started selling these carts with huge motors, with huge controllers and at a bargain price. And so I don't even research a lot about Club Car and them. I just don't. But I'm sure they're now starting to make some bigger controllers and stuff like that. But for most of their carts, I'm sure an Allied battery is just fine. I'm sure it's totally fine for what Cartmart sells. The way Greg explained it is they don't sell many icons. I actually went to their website and looked it up. You can see icons at the bottom. I don't even know if they still sell icons, to be honest with you. But basically, if you look at it that way, for most of their carts, and I know somebody's going to say, oh, well, a lot of the carts listed there, they have big controllers. Okay, maybe they do. But I do know that the cart that Greg has, it is pulling a lot of amps, especially going up a hill. And that's important. So basically what he was, he has the 105, the big one, the one container battery, if you will, the 148 volt, 105 amp hour battery. And as you can see it pictured here. So if you look at that battery, the specs of it, it calls for 300, it says it has 350 amp max discharge. That's what it says. That's the first thing I looked at when he reached out to me. So if that's the case, I was like, that it should be totally fine. Because his is it's like a 400 and something controller. It doesn't matter. 350 max is max discharge. It's the max it's going to pull. It's not, 350 is great. It just is. It's fine. I think my battery's a 200 max amp discharge, or amp max discharge. So anyhow, that right there in itself, it should be fine. So I started to tell him, for now, we're just going to assume the battery is what it is, especially that Allied had looked at it. So let's just move forward and try to see if we can get this fixed. So told him what I would do. And the first was to start swapping out all his cables and get some of the thick marine grade, the really good grade cable that you need. It's just, to me, it's a must have when you're upgrading to lithium. You got to put the heavy duty cables all throughout all the big components, going from the battery to the motor to the controller, stuff like that. Because a lot of people, they'll take the wires that were in there for their lead acid batteries, and they'll literally connect a couple of those cables to then connect the lithium battery. It's just not the way you do it. You actually run the big heavy gauge wire, and I hope that everybody understands that. I've talked about it a few times. And then I told him to do that. I said, if you really want to make sure you don't have any issues, you should probably get the Navitas controller. Just get it, And we actually looked into that. The problem was the Navitas, the harness didn't match up with his particular cart. And it's just how it is sometimes with Icon. You think you have the right year. His year should have been right for the Navitas controller, but it didn't match up, and that's just kind of how this whole process was. And that's kind of why I'm making the video, because we spent a little time on this trying to help him out. And if the battery is what it's supposed to be, none of this should have been happening. So ultimately, I told him to replace the wires. I wanted him to go ahead and trade out, just put in another battery. But Cartmart has a situation where they are tied to Allied. That's their vendor. They don't have a deal with anybody else, I guess, or they don't want to have one. And like I said, those batteries are probably fine for most of their golf carts. But in this instance, I believe they needed to have something else to test it. And that's probably, these dealers, I know they make deals and this, that, and the other, but it's good to have options. We all know that, right? So if you had options, they could throw something in there and they'd be like, hey, this fixes the problem, so we know the battery's not good enough. But we couldn't do that. And him being that far away, I couldn't help him at all. So told him, let's get the cables replaced, let's get the solenoid upgraded, and let's just see if we can get, see if it'll all just work that way. In the meanwhile, something that happened is I think his brake got locked up or something like that when they were changing out the solenoid. They were having an issue with the solenoid, but I think it's because they don't have maybe because they deal with all the other carts, but they had trouble finding a high-powered solenoid that I was saying they really need to get. And so ultimately, they ended up going with, they said, hey, we want to give you more power. Let's put 4 Allied batteries in there. So what they mean is they wanted to put 4 smaller cell batteries in there, which at the end of the day would give him 120 amp hour as far as main power. But the trick to these batteries is it also, when you're running them that way, like in parallel, you can put out more output. I'm not sure of what the equation is for it or whatever, but I have seen where BMS would act up, stuff like that, and then people would run batteries in parallel, and then it would not trip. I'm not telling anybody to run any battery in parallel. Talk to your dealer. Some batteries are meant for that, some aren't. Some of these brands are absolutely against it, but I have seen it help with certain people's problem. So in this instance, running in parallel is what they wanted to do, and I personally thought it was a good idea. I was still worried because Allied, they haven't shown me much in this situation. That's the truth. Their battery that they have should have worked. It's 350 max discharge, and it should not be turning off every trip in the middle of it, because it just shouldn't have been happening. So you know how this is going to end. With those 4 batteries, it actually turned out just fine. They worked great. He has put all of his dogs on there. He's put other people on there. He's driven miles and miles and miles. He updated me. He's up to 1,000 miles now. I mean, the cart's got a lot more miles than that, but he's up to 1,000 with the new batteries. He has just absolutely been running this cart, and he's had 0 issues. He's confident. He's telling me he's so happy that he just believes it's, the deal's fixed. But I wanted to make sure I made the video because some of you are out there, you're looking, maybe your local dealer deals with Allied. Maybe you should buy an Allied. I don't know. I can only speak to the time I spent in trying to help this like I said, super nice guy. And I think that everybody should know this story. So maybe, just maybe, it can save them some time. And I've said this before in other videos. You live in a flat area, maybe you won't have any issues like that. But for him, and having a cart that's pulling that much power, that battery wasn't right for him. But if you look at the specs, anybody that knows these batteries, that battery should have been good enough. It should have been. Yes, it's not 400 amp max, but that's only for the max discharge. As far as what it's going to pull, it should have been enough. Anyway, I'm super happy everything worked out for Greg. He can now take his ride with his puppies every day, and everything seems to be great. But if you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm sure he'll reply. And I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.